Rockefeller Ranch out of Jackson Hole. They do get together, we just don't know where it happens.
It leads me to feel that of all the people who have been involved in this administration, he, perhaps more than any other, has understood the importance not only of the private sector, but of the role of the private sector in bringing about a different approach to Latin America, both on the economic and political front. And his quiet but very effective support with the President and with others in the administration has really made that difference. So his presence here today, I think, is of great importance to us, and also gives us an opportunity to express to him our special appreciation for that all-important role that he has played. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mac McClarty.
This is precisely the way one would like to start one's week, with a particularly warm and a particularly generous introduction. David, thank you very much. I'm afraid in my 4th year in Washington, the infamous Washington allergies have finally caught up with me, so I apologize this morning for my hoarseness, but I am delighted to be here, and I am very pleased to accept your invitation along with my colleagues, Ambassador Davidow and Patterson, Ambassador Babbitt, Ambassador Rich Brown, and other colleagues here at the State Department and the White House. I must say one of the real privileges in serving as the President's and the Secretary of State's Special Envoy to the Hemisphere is the close association that I've had the opportunity to develop with the Americas Society founder, David Rockefeller. I have had the opportunity to know the Rockefeller family for some time. As many of you know, Winthrop Rockefeller was governor in Arkansas, a 2-term governor in the 1960s, and his family maintains a valued legacy across our state and indeed in our national history. In speaking of David, and particularly after that generous introduction, I am reminded of the story of the Baron de Rothschild, who one day was approached in his office above the London Stock Exchange by an acquaintance requesting a small loan. Now, the Baron refused the loan, offering instead a gift that he claimed would far exceed the value of the requested sum. Heading down to the trading floor, the Baron put his arm around his acquaintance, and the two men walked slowly around the room as they conversed in a relaxed manner of trusted and old friends. Within hours, according to legend, the friend was able to raise the necessary funds elsewhere. So in a sense this morning, I feel as the Baron's friend must have felt. Now, I have never asked David Rockefeller for a loan, but he has been a valued mentor to me, and I know to so many of you, and I certainly count myself very fortunate to call him my friend. I've also known Ambassador Ted Briggs since before the Summit of the Americas. At this time last year, there was shrill voices on the left and on the right, criticizing almost in a cynical way our collective efforts of hemispheric integration. Some claimed the Summit of the Americas in Miami was little more than a glorified photo opportunity. Some question our real commitment to the implementation of the summit agenda and plan of action. And some called us wrong-headed, or at least naive, in thinking that we could fundamentally change and reorient hemispheric relations based on truly shared values and common interest. Well, as the old song goes, what a difference a year makes. And as the proverbial saying suggests, sometimes things do look like a failure in the middle. And our efforts to reinvent, fundamentally change hemispheric relationships have certainly had their moments of problems and concerns and frustrations. But I think it is fair to say that the summit has cemented a new consensus based on democracy and open markets. And as David noted, we have placed emphasis on the trade front, an emphasis on economically integrating the hemisphere. At both the Denver Trade Ministerial last June and the Cartagena Ministerial in March, we took concrete steps to achieve the free trade area of the Americas by the year 2005. Working groups were initially established in Denver. They've been expanded, and they will be gathering the critical information and laying the groundwork for the beginning of negotiations. Areas are being identified where early actions, an early harvest, if you will, can be put into place to benefit hemispheric business now, in the near term. And at the next trade ministerial, scheduled for Belo Horizonte, Brazil, early next year, we will be in a position to determine when and on what basis to proceed with actual negotiations. Now, let me say, not achieving Chile fast track this year was a disappointment. And in this political climate, with a limited time left legislatively, we will not be able to go forward this year. But even without that fast-track legislation, we want to move forward, and we will move forward to strengthen the NAFTA as the cornerstone on which we are building new hemispheric trade and investment infrastructure. The President is committed, as Secretary Christopher underscored in his comments, to free and open and fair trade. We remain committed to Chile's accession to NAFTA and strengthening the NAFTA as we move forward, and I look forward to those efforts in 1997. And let me say very clearly that we are not focused, as some have suggested, on establishing a new world order, but rather bringing order to a new world. But beyond
for this team is not whether they are politically agile and whether they're smart and whether whether they're savvy. All of those things they are. I think the big question is whether they have the capacity to construct a conceptual framework for American policy for the years ahead. We have lacked such a framework over the last few years since the Berlin Wall collapsed. The consensus we had, the understanding we had about what our purpose and what our role in the world should be, what the underlying tenets of American foreign policy obviously have disappeared, and no one yet has been able to come up with a coherent framework. George Bush tried. You remember just after the war against, well, during the conflict with Saddam Hussein, which he handled so superbly in a short-term sense, but he kept talking about a new world order. And then President Bush, at the end of that war, promised he would give 4 graduation addresses, 4 commencement addresses, describing that new world order and what America's role was going to be in it. It turned out he gave one of those addresses and canceled the other 3 and talked about something else. That's because they weren't ready yet to define that new framework. And we've had that same absence of a framework during the Clinton administration. It is, I think, the biggest challenge facing us, because it not only can give us a sense of where we are going, but it also can help in bringing the American people more fully into the support of what we're trying to do, because people now don't quite understand it. It seems very ad hoc to them.
U.S. leadership from administrations of both parties, we have in our era an unprecedented opportunity to integrate the world around basic principles of democracy, open markets, and a common commitment to peace. Not every country is yet able to participate fully in this integration. Some are in transition from centralized planning and totalitarian rule to democracy. Some have only begun to dip their toes into economic and political reform. Some are still too weak to participate meaningfully in the international system, and a few, such as Iraq, Iran, and Castro's Cuba, have governments that actively oppose the premises upon which that system is based. As a policymaker, I see a corresponding four-part challenge. First, to strengthen the ties and prevent ruptures among full participants in the international system. Second, to help transitional states to play a greater role. Third, to give a boost to the weak states most willing to do what is necessary to join the system. And fourth, to make it clear to the outlaw states that they cannot prosper at the expense of the rest. They must either reform or suffer in isolation. Clearly, the international